What's going on, good people? What's going on, baby? It's me, Mr. Glasses. Rapper up there. Good crew. Good. Fuck all the bullshit. And here we go.
Congressional subpoenas on the January 6th committee.
I hope that the committee goes after them and holds them accountable.
Should they be prosecuted by
I do, yes.
President Biden in 2021 saying people who defied the January 6th committee subpoenas should be held criminally accountable. That newly resurfaced video clip making the rounds this week after the president's son defied his own congressional subpoena, refusing to sit for House deposition. Time now for our legal panel. George Washington University law professor Jonathan Turley, Tom Dupree, former principal deputy assistant attorney general, and Constitutional Accountability Center president Elizabeth Weiser. Good to see all of you. Okay, gosh, we have a lot to try to get through, but let's start here. Do you think that Hunter will actually be held in contempt by the House?
I think he should be. He's in flagrant contempt. This was a valid subpoena, and he went to the Capitol to essentially blow a raspberry at the House. He did it from the Senate side, so the Sergeant of Arms could pull them in. But there was no question about it. The arguments being made that somehow this was not valid because there was a vote later on impeachment is nonsense. This was an oversight committee. It was issued under two committees and three different grounds for jurisdiction. But really, to me, the question is not whether he could be charged with contempt. The answer is most certainly yes. The question is, what do you do with Eric Swalwell?
Oh, that was some bullshit.
Arrived with him, facilitated
That
what
popped
may
out
be a
of
federal
nowhere.
crime, and to defy his own house on a
That
valid
bitch
subpoena.
just dropped out of nowhere.
Well, and if there is a contempt charge for either
Okay, I'm
one
getting-
of
yeah,
them,
on
then the question
TV too.
becomes whether the DOJ will actually prosecute it. New York Post editorial board says this is a serious hot potato for Attorney General Merrick Garland. He can shield Hunter and thus his dad from the consequences of defying the law, but only at the cost of exposing himself as utterly partisan. Given the Steve Bannon case, the Peter Navarro case, what does DOJ do?
My guess is that the DOJ, under the control of President Biden and the Biden administration, would not prosecute Hunter Biden for contempt. Should they? Yes. Is there a double standard? Yes. But I think at the end of the day, I would be pleasantly surprised if Merrick Garland got a contempt referral to the United States Congress and said, we
Y'all got fucking internet connection. This dude don't even die.
Look, I totally agree with you. The Justice Department is very tight up because we are going to be able to point to all sorts of examples where they have prosecuted these contempt citations. It's taken seriously. They enforce the law. In Hunter Biden's case, we can make an exception.
Okay, I noted this with Congressman Khan. I want to bring this poll up again. A view on congressional Republicans pushing impeachment proceedings. Those numbers have now flipped, Elizabeth, to more people believe it's legitimate than bogus at this point. They've seen enough. They say at least they question the inquiry should proceed.
Yeah, impeachment is an incredibly powerful tool in our Constitution, and it should be wielded with care and responsibly. I think that we've seen months and months and months of efforts by House Republicans to try to come up with something that they could tell the American people that would connect the president to his son's dealings and whatever you may think of them. And there hasn't been a shred of direct evidence about President Biden presented to the American people. So I think that far from this being a carefully wielded, responsibly wielded impeachment inquiry, it seems to be careless and irresponsible, particularly when there is so much more business that is pressing to the American people. But I just want to step back for a minute and talk about the contempt charge, because I fully believe that Merrick Garland will follow the facts of the law where they lead. That has been his hallmark. There has been accountability for Hunter Biden in some criminal prosecutions. He has not stopped that, and I don't believe he ever would stop that. That's not the kind of person Merrick Garland is.
So I'll take a little vote here then. Who, show of hands, thinks the DOJ would actually criminally pursue Hunter Biden if he's held in contempt? Tom, I'm putting you down for no.
I actually think that they would have no
Okay, maybe you think they
I think it depends on the facts, because look, there is also, like, Abby Lowell, Hunter Biden's lawyer, saying, look, House Oversight Committee Chairman Homer said you could choose whether to do public testimony or private testimony. If you choose public, then you changed your mind. So I think there were facts here, but I think Merrick Garland would follow the facts of the law where they lead.
Okay, let's play something from Ian Sams over the White House. He tends to agree with you on this whole thing. Here's what he said.
These guys have made up and moved the goalposts every step of the way of this investigation. It's all baseless. They've been investigating the president all year long. For example, they've gotten 100,000 pages of documents. They've interviewed witnesses for 40 hours. And guess what? They've come up with not a single shred of evidence of any wrongdoing of any kind by President Biden.
What do you say, Jonathan? Because the illicit folks will say there's no smoking gun, as Elizabeth says.
It's simply not true. I mean, there's been an enormous amount of evidence put together by the House committees, millions of dollars that have gone through a labyrinth of different accounts and shell companies to Biden family members. There are Biden associates who said that what the president has said publicly is nonsense, that he did know about this influence peddling. And most people agree that this is influence peddling. This is corruption. But I have to correct one notion that is being bantered about, and that is that you have to really show that money went directly to the president. That's not the standard. That in federal cases involving bribery and other crimes, giving money to a principal's family members is in fact a benefit under federal law. Otherwise, everyone will just give money to family members and say it's not a bribe, it's not impeachable. And by the way, it is impeachable. I was lead counsel in the last judicial impeachment trial. My client was impeached because benefits were given to a judge's family member. So many of these congressmen repeating this argument voted on that impeachment and said it is impeachable.
Okay, I want to try to get to a quick lightning round, if we can, on the Supreme Court. So they've agreed to at least have a conversation about whether to expedite this case. The President Trump is claiming immunity. His team's got to file something this week. How quickly could we hear from the Supreme Court?
I think we're going to hear very quickly from the Supreme Court. Look, it is extraordinary the time schedule that is being proposed, but as all sides have acknowledged, this is an absolutely extraordinary case. What the Supreme Court has said is that they take this request seriously, they're going to give it due consideration, and if they agree to review it, I would expect they would wrap this up in about a month or two, which is absolute lightning speed by Supreme Court standards. But look, everyone understands what's at stake here. It's a hugely important legal question. In all likelihood, it will be decided at some point by the Supreme Court. So I think the question on the table now is, are they going to decide it before trial occurs or after?
Right, because what Special Counsel Jack Smith is trying to do is start a March trial on these charges. So, Elizabeth, what do you think are the odds that whether it's the appellate court or the Supreme Court actually derails that March start date? Because the Trump team, I'm sure, would love to see this happen after the election, not before.
Right. I mean, I think the March trial date, given these appellate processes, are, that's a little bit precarious. But I do think that if there is delay, it probably won't be very long, because Tom's exactly right that the Supreme Court is taking this seriously. They said, let's take these questions of immunity off the table, decide them at this early juncture. And frankly, the D.C. Circuit could move even while the Supreme Court is considering this expedited petition for certiorari before judgment.
There's also this issue of the obstruction charge that a couple of other January 6 defendants, the Supreme Court's agreed to hear whether those charges, those federal charges, should have been used against them, but they're part of the Trump case as well. How does that factor in?
Well, 2 of the 4 counts against Trump with the special counsel in D.C. involve obstruction claims. If the court changes the interpretation of those provisions, it could have a major blowback on that trial. It could literally cut those counts in half. But the problem for the special counsel is his sense of urgency that we need to try Trump before the election. And they sort of shoehorned this March date just into the schedule, just before Super Tuesday. It's not clear to me the Supreme Court's going to share that sense of urgency. Because if Trump is convicted, it doesn't mean he won't be eligible for the presidency. He could still take office. So the Supreme Court may be looking at this and saying, maybe we should wait for the D.C. Circuit in regular order to play out.
And quickly, Elizabeth, because I know you've been interested in this case, the Supreme Court has also agreed to hear a case on a use of an abortion medication, mifepristone. That's going to be on the schedule in the spring as well. Probably a decision in June, right in the middle of the election.
Absolutely, right in the middle of presidential and congressional campaigns. This case is not just about the liberty and freedom of American individuals, because it has to do with a particular regulated, FDA-regulated drug, mifepristone. It also has to do with the pharmaceutical industry and the availability of drugs generally to Americans. So this is a very key case on a number of issues before the court.
Yeah, it throws abortion right back into the middle of the 2024 conversation. Okay, legal.